Welcome back to Reasons for Believing. Great to have you with us. Hope you enjoyed the first installment. We're putting the case that the Christian faith enables us to make more sense both of our own lives and of the world around us than the alternatives. We started by looking last time at one of the classic arguments for the existence of God, the argument from the intelligibility of the universe. So why is it that a universe that the scientists want to tell us is a random universe is nonetheless amenable to the numbers, the ideas, and the words that we humans use? And we thought there's something serious about the way the universe is intelligible that tells us that mind comes before matter. So what or who is the great mind behind it all? The second argument I'm going to look at is the argument from the first cause. So St. Thomas Aquinas has got, we mentioned him last time, has got three further arguments to the ones that we looked at. And the first cause is the one that says that everything that happens in the universe is caused by something else that happened before it. It's cause and effect. And that something else was in turn caused by earlier events, and so on, back and back and back. Now, can this just go round and round forever? Only if we could reach a point where things that have already happened can be caused by things that haven't happened yet. And since that's totally impossible, there must have been a first cause, argues Thomas Aquinas. So this we call God in Thomas Aquinas' assertions. There are two other arguments that go with this. One is the argument from motion. Everything that moves is first moved by something else and set in motion. But it's really the same argument in my view. It's just that the cause and the effect are both movements. And the same is true with the contingency argument, that every being owes its existence to other beings and is therefore contingent upon them. We're only here because our mum and dad met and fell in love and all of those things, and we were the result. And what if they'd met someone else? We wouldn't be the same. We're contingent beings. But eventually you get back, following that chain of contingency, to something that has absolute being. And since contingent basically means caused by something else, I think we're dealing with the same argument. I'm sticking with the first cause argument. If you think I'm selling you short, well, look into it a bit further and come back and contradict me. So the first cause has received massive support from the Big Bang theory of the origin of the universe. We call this installment of Reasons for Believing Origins. Let's not forget that this theory means not merely that all the matter and energy in the universe started with one inconceivably huge explosion, but it also means that absolutely everything about our universe also started in the same event. In other words, there was nowhere for the universe to exist before the Big Bang because there were no dimensions. There was no length and breadth and height. There was no space. There wasn't anywhere for the Big Bang to happen. We shouldn't think that was a vast vacuum which the Big Bang exploded into. There wasn't anywhere for there to be a vacuum. So our dimensions started, nor was there any time before the Big Bang for anything to happen in, because time, according to all the theoretical and mathematical models, also came into existence. The space-time continuum had not started until the Big Bang started it off. So there were no laws of nature, because it's the Big Bang that brought those laws of nature into existence and forms their starting point. The Big Bang contradicts the laws of nature in and of itself, because things don't just explode into being out of nothing. or there'd be absolute chaos. Just imagine a world like that. It'd be chaotic and totally unreasonable. So that's how big the Big Bang is. It gave us the space-time continuum that we and all created things have. That brings us very directly to Aquinas' point that there is a literally supernatural explanation required by an event like this. I'm going to avoid supernatural because any atheists who are following these broadcasts will, well, their heckles will rise at that. I'm going to say extra-natural, just for the sake of not appearing to push a particular line, but being neutral as we consider the arguments. There is something outside nature, therefore, that causes the laws of nature to spring into being with the Big Bang. There is no nature for there to be laws of until it happens. It's very interesting, actually, that the Bible starts with, let there be light. And of course, everything that we have is relative to the speed of light. And that's just a very interesting thing for us to think about. Well, this is a deep source of embarrassment to the contemporary scientific community, where their preconceptions are naturalistic. That is to say, that nature is all there is. There's nothing outside nature. So it's pretty embarrassing that the Big Bang requires us to have an extra-natural origin, an extra-natural first cause to get the Big Bang to happen. This wasn't an embarrassment for their predecessors, people like Newton and Kepler and so on, and Copernicus, who were believers. And they knew there was an extra-natural source behind it, so it was non-embarrassing. Anyway, the hunt is on now in the scientific community to find some kind of extra-natural cause that's not a supernatural cause in the older senses of the word. And this is what I make of the journey so far. I hope I'm right in believing that there have been three main contenders in contemporary science cosmology to locate this. We can locate our extra nature in an anomaly. This is what Stephen Hawking termed a singularity in a brief history of time. Yes, I am one of those strange people who not only has a copy of it on our bookshelf, like many of us, but have also read it. Unfortunately, though, I'm not a genius mathematician, so I can't claim to follow all the amazing maths that's involved in it. But I will admit to this, I am suspicious of the term singularity. Isn't singularity just another way of saying a one-off? When we say something's caused by a singularity, aren't we in fact saying we don't know how it's caused because it doesn't fit in with our normal explanations? And therefore, because it's a singularity, we don't really have to explain it. We don't really need to know what might go on in there because it's all a bit warped. Well, we do know, however, that singularities exist because they occur in black holes. What if there was a previous universe that all got sucked down into a supermassive black hole, so huge and dense that everything about that previous universe, except gravity, got destroyed? What if all the energy thus compressed into an infinitesimally tiny point then exploded as the Big Bang? Well, I'm afraid this view is not as fashionable now as it was back in 1988 when Stephen Hawking wrote that. I'm not completely sure of the reasons behind this, but here is what I suspect. The Big Bang, on the model in A Brief History of Time, presupposes that first there was this big crunch from the previous universe, that all the matter and energy in the system is sucked into various black holes, which then get sucked into each other by the sheer power of their gravity to form the supermassive black hole that then has to explode. But we know that our own universe is not going to end this way. So since 1988, we've done more calculations which tell us that there isn't enough mass in our universe to give us the gravity which will counteract the velocity at which our universe is expanding. So in the Big Bang, the space-time continuum, remember, we're not talking about a vacuum here, we're talking about the very parameters of existence itself. So that's expanding the dimensions of the universe, if you want to put it in that way, and it's expanding too fast, we now know, for gravity to be able to suck it back again. So if matter and energy are being conserved, the laws of nature, even though the Big Bang tells us there weren't any laws of nature before because there wasn't a nature, if they've been conserved and gravity has been conserved through the Big Crunch and into the next universe, ours, well, it can't have been the same. It can't have functioned the same way because the same amount of matter and the same amount of energy and the same gravity won't cause a big crunch. Our own universe won't end that way. It's going to get more and more thinly spread as it expands, and the universe will die of attenuation with a whimper, not with a bang. That is, if things carry on as they are, without any kind of extra-natural intervention. Well, that means there'd have to be a radical discontinuity between the universe we experience now and the one that went before, because the laws of nature governing the two are different. That means we need another supernature in addition to the previous universe, which is capable of spontaneously generating new laws of nature. So the Big Crunch cannot give a complete account of the origins of the universe. It's got to look for further sources beyond and behind it if it can. Some other entity needs to be factored in to make it all happen. And we're back again, looking for a first cause. Well, another alternative briefly offered by Stephen Hawking in that same book is the idea of a massive fluctuation in the quantum field. So quantum mechanics is the science of the extremely tiny particles which don't seem to follow the usual laws of nature. They seem to work more by laws of probability than anything else. Apparently, quantum mechanics enables us to consider a vacuum not as truly empty, but as a space where electrons and positrons may spontaneously emerge, and because they're exact opposites, they immediately cancel each other out. All we need then is for an awful lot of these to appear simultaneously in the same time and space. Whatever's that supposed to mean, time and space in a quantum context? Because I don't think we've established that there's really a connection there between them. And then to do so without cancelling each other out, and we've got our Big Bang, an absolutely massive fluctuation in the quantum field would be required. So again, I don't have the physics to deal with this properly. I'd love to have someone who knows their stuff sitting here with me and running through it with me. If only my old mate Roger from uni was here. However, it seems to me as a non-specialist that there are lots of huge unanswered questions with this. I do get that there is a degree to which these very small particles, quarks and so on, aren't there in the Newtonian and Einsteinian universe, which is so essential to our own existence. At some level, they're acting more like fields of energy than bits of matter. So we can't predict exactly where they are and where they might be next. This isn't the same, is it, as saying there is this unbelievably energetic quantum field extending beyond our own universe. It's still a mystery how that field actually interacts with the universe we experience. We haven't observed quantum fields from outside our own universe with all its laws of nature because we can't do that. Because all we experience is within this universe. So it's difficult to say, where is the hat that we're pulling this particular rabbit out of? And I don't think we can have much of a meaningful idea of the behavior of such a supermassive field. Let's just hope and pray this, though, that it's not often given to massive random fluctuations of the sort Hawking, perhaps rather embarrassedly, sneaked into his book. Because if it were like that, the life of our universe will be totally chaotic. If at any moment the quantum field could explode into it in that way, there'd be no laws of nature. There'd be no mind before matter. Our universe will be unintelligible. So let's go back to something else and just look at the third argument, or the third possible reason, because all this is up for grabs. No, the scientific community say this is science, but it's speculation. Thirdly, we can go back to the multiverse to provide our first cause. You may remember we mentioned this a little bit last time. In some way, according to this theory, new universes keep bubbling out of a sort of primeval cosmic soup, which is the multiverse, or the sum total of all universes. Nearly every bubble is ephemeral and pops because they can't get the laws of nature right, because they're random, so they are unsustainable. But once in a while, by a trillionth chance, a viable universe is formed. And ours happens to be the holder of this golden ticket, where somehow or other, laws of the universe that are actually sustainable, that actually work, have emerged. However, in reasons for believing number one, I took the view that this scheme, with its multiplication of millions of invisible and, frankly, for us, totally unverifiable and indemonstrable entities, has a fabricated look about it. It fails the test known as Occam's razor. To make it work, we have to invent all kinds of individual, millions upon millions upon millions, of totally invisible entities. So it fails. And yes, it may be that God has created other universes, but that's working backwards from a reasonable, creative, beautiful, energetic God who loves making beautiful things. And those universes would all work. That's a different thing from the starting point of randomness. If you're going to start with random, then you are going to end up saying that the multiverse fails the test of Occam's razor. So let's put these three cosmologies together. That is, when I say the three cosmologies, I mean the Big Crunch, the random fluctuation in the quantum field, and the multiverse. What do they have in common? Well, all of them try to bypass Thomas Aquinas' first cause argument. They're all asserting that there was something there before the Big Bang. It doesn't really matter too much whether it's a previous universe that went down the plug hole of the Big Crunch, or a highly turbulent and energetic quantum field, or a multiverse which has the interesting property of spontaneously somehow generating universes. The point of them is that we have something pre-existent which dispenses with a need for any kind of creator. I'm actually reminded of the work of Fred Hoyle, who came up with the steady state theory of the universe. Anyone remember that? This was still around when I was going to school, so a little while ago. So, unfortunately for him and his theory, the steady state theory has been disproved by the Big Bang. The background radiation of the universe demonstrates that a Big Bang, an explosion of light, energy, time, space, laws of nature, matter, all in one go, took place and created this background energy. So, as an atheist, he hated the Big Bang theory because it could be held to be an act of creation and therefore point to a creator. So he asserted that the universe, as we know, is expanding. He was right about that. And therefore, that new matter and energy must emerge spontaneously into existence as everything separates out through its expansion and fill up those gaps. So the universe then, with this theory, could be eternal and self-sufficient and do without a creator. This, unfortunately, is completely contrary to what we know of the laws of the universe, which state that matter and energy don't spontaneously come into existence, and that the matter and energy that we have in the system of the universe at the moment is the sum total of all the matter and energy that came into being with the Big Bang. So all the above, those three theories, the theory of the quantum field and its turbulence, the Big Crunch, and the multiverse, all the above look like ways to bring back the steady state, don't they? But on a new level. Since we can't avoid the Big Bang, let's put something else in before it, so the universe can keep going without a beginning. A quantum field, a Big Crunch, a multiverse, whatever. But even then, can we still succeed in finally exorcising the Creator from his own world? No, we can't. Because at the risk of repeating the child's embarrassing question, who made God then? The issue of origins still follows us into these new, entirely hypothetical and unprovable spaces. Where did that vast quantum field, or that multiverse, or that universe that crunched arise from? Did they have a beginning? Aren't they subject to those laws of chain and cause and effect, that endless chain? Not endless, because it has to have an original cause somewhere. Well, we're still looking then, aren't we, for what caused them? These ingenious cosmologies fail to answer Aquinas' question. Since everything we see is a product of cause and effect, including even ourselves, was there a first cause? Well, even if they could answer the question, would we then have got round God? Or would we find that we are merely describing his immense handiwork, as Newton and Copernicus and Kepler and all the others famously thought, that the multiverse rather, or the quantum field, or the extinct previous universes were also the product of his vast imagination and inconceivable purposes? Is this the only cause that can actually justify the effect which is our universe? Well, there's only one more hurdle to clear, I promise, as this edition of Reasons for Believing nears its exhausted end. This is the assertion by Richard Dawkins, who I know you've heard of, that a creator being cannot be the explanation for the origins of the universe because it's not a proper explanation. A proper explanation, says Professor Dawkins, must simplify the thing explained. We can't have an explanation that's more complicated than the thing it's explaining, can we? Now, it seems that if God is the creator of everything, if he's the first cause and the source and the origin, well, he would be greater and more complex than the universe he's alleged to have created. God, therefore, cannot be a proper explanation. Well, I hope you agree with me that this argument is deeply flawed. In fact, we constantly accept explanations that are far more complex than the thing that is being explained. The explanation for a joint stool is that a carpenter, a far more complex entity, made it to sit on. And in case that metaphor seems unfairly to sneak in creation by a personal being, there are others. The aurora borealis was presumed by early scientists, once we got past the magic stage, to be the result of emanations from the poles of the Earth. In time, a far larger and grander and more complicated account has been accepted, that in fact it storms in an object 333,000 times more massive than the Earth, hurling matter 93 million miles through the void of space that interact with the magnetic field of our planet and cause the aurora. The more complex explanation turns out to be true. And worse still for Dawkins, let's say he goes down the multiverse route. Well, if the multiverse is the explanation of our present universe, that's a far, far, far more complex explanation, isn't it, than the universe that we see around us now. We've got millions, billions, trillions of invisible universes, all with different laws and properties. That's not a simple explanation. That's a vastly overcomplicated explanation. But if we follow Dawkins' logic through, that every cause must be simpler than its effect, because every explanation is simpler than the thing explained, we're going to end up with a strange upside-down version of Thomas Aquinas. Eventually, as we trace these increasing simplifications, the explanations, further and further back through the chain of cause and effect, phenomenon and its explanation, we can only end up through that constant simplification with a big fat zero. We end up stating, if we only think it through, which Professor Dawkins clearly hasn't done, with the ultimate explanation turning out to be that there can be no explanations, that there can be no causes, and there can be no reasons for anything. We're going back to the ultimate simplification. And what is the ultimate simplification? But nothing whatsoever. And so we've got to start thinking all over again, Professor, about how something came out of nothing. How are we going to do that? We've got to therefore accept that Dawkins has led us down a completely wrong turning that actually doesn't lead anywhere. Because the ultimate explanation is zero, then there are no explanations at all, ultimately, in Dawkins. All he has succeeded in demonstrating for us is the incorrigible reductionism of his own mind. Don't worry if you haven't heard about reductionism, I'll be coming back to that later, but all it is saying is that something is nothing but something else, and it's stupid, and we'll come back to that another time. So finally, what have we got out of all this notion crunching? Surveys repeatedly show that people rarely come to believe because somebody like that well-meaning vicar on my screen has tried to argue them into it. This often just breaks down into a macho contest of wills. Anyway, I'm going to stick to my point and fight you sticking to yours. Instead, it's life events, isn't it, that lead people. This is certainly my experience as a vicar, dealing with people who've bereaved, who've fallen in love and getting married, who've had a child. It's life events that make them ask all those big questions. Is anybody out there? What does it all mean? Is there any significance to my life? So, if that's really what's going on, have these two rather cosmological and perhaps a bit abstract bits of this series been worth it? Well, I wanted to nonetheless do it for three reasons, rather. To remind believers, you don't have to accept the much flashed about opinion that faith is irrational. I hope readers will agree with my stance that repeated secularizing attempts to destroy the Christian worldview have not succeeded. there is still a satisfactory, reasonable case to be made for faith. We still have to go on from there to make that faith our own by trusting in God. But some of the alternatives, in fact, ultimately I'm going to say all of them, do not really stack up very well by comparison. Secondly, I'm producing these things in the hope that those who don't believe will continue to explore. Don't just wipe it away because actually you don't want there to be a God. You don't want to feel that your life is accountable to someone or other, or that you're just a contingent being, or that you might be judged if you start abusing God's world or his people. Well, there are a lot of reasons people have for not believing, for trying to shuffle the question of God into a corner and shut down the lid on it and lock it and hope that God will never come out of that box again. So I'm trying to hold the door open for you and say, don't think it's as easy to get away from all that as you want to think. And thirdly, I'm going to assert later that faith provides a better means for seeing life whole. And life actually needs to include our rational life, our mental life, what we do with our brains, and our scientific inquiries got to be included in what we mean by life, alongside many other things that reductionist science likes to exclude where it can. Well, next time, I'll be getting on to stuff that really excites me. That is, I believe in God because I believe Jesus is his son. This takes us from a first mover who's only really needed to kick the whole game off, to blow the whistle at the start of the match. And we go on from there to a Lord who actually wants to engage with us. So, and that's about Jesus coming into the world as a human being. So we'll look at that very next time. I hope you're sticking with me. Don't forget, your thoughts are welcome. You can comment on YouTube, or if you've seen this on a WhatsApp or on a Facebook link, then please get back to me, ring me up, talk to me. We can have a meeting and thrash these things if you like, but your thoughts are welcome. And so I look forward very much to seeing you next time. I believe in God because I believe that Jesus is his son. See you then.